Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 12, Beyond Renunciation and Knowledge. In this chapter, the glories of holy association and the superexcellence of the pure love of the residents of Vṛndāvana are described. The association of saintly devotees destroys the soul's attachment to material life and is capable of bringing even the Lord Kṛṣṇa under the control. Neither yoga, Sāṅkhya philosophy, ordinary religious duties, study of scriptures, austerities, renunciation, works of iṣṭā and pūrtam, charity, vows of fasting, worship of the Deity, secret mantras, visiting of holy places, nor adherence to any major or minor regulative principles can effect the same result. In every age there are demons, monsters, birds and animals who are in the mode of passion and ignorance, and there are also human beings in the categories of businessmen, women, workers, outcastes, and so on, who cannot study the Vedic scriptures. Nevertheless, by the purifying effect of the association of devotees, they may all achieve the supreme abode of the Personality of Godhead, whereas without such saintly association, even those very seriously endeavoring in yoga, Sāṅkhya study, charity, vows, and practice of the renounced order of life may remain incapable of attaining the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The young damsels of Vraja, ignorant of the true identity of Lord Kṛṣṇa Chandra, considered him to be their paramour, who would give them pleasure. Yet by the power of their constant association with Sri Kṛṣṇa, they attained to the Supreme Absolute Truth, which even great demigods like Brahma cannot achieve. The young women of Vṛndāvana displayed such deep attachment to Lord Kṛṣṇa that their minds, which were overflowing with the ecstasy of being with him, perceived an entire night spent in his company as just a fraction of a second. However, when Akrura took Sri Kṛṣṇa along with Baladeva to Mathura, the gopis then thought each night without him to be equal in duration to a millennium of the demigods. Being tormented by separation from Lord Kṛṣṇa, they could not imagine anything that could give them satisfaction other than his return. This is the incomparable excellence of the gopis' pure love of God. The Supreme Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa, after imparting these instructions to Uddhava, advised that for the sake of attaining the absolute truth, Uddhava should give up all consideration of religion and irreligion as promulgated in the Shrutis and Smritis, and instead take shelter of the example of the women of Vṛndāvana. Text 1-2. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Narotchayati Mam Yogo Na Sāṅkhyam Dharma Evacha Na Dvādhyayastapapastyago Nishta pūrtam Na dakshina Vratani Yagyaschandamsi Tirthani Niyama Yamaha Yatha Varunte Satsangaha Sarvasangapaha Himam. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Uddhava, by associating with my pure devotees, one can destroy one's attachment for all objects of material sense gratification. Such purifying association brings me under the control of my devotee. One may perform the Ashtanga Yoga system, engage in philosophical analysis of the elements of material nature, practice non-violence and other ordinary principles of piety, chant the Vedas, perform penances, take to the renounced order of life, execute sacrificial performance and dig wells, plant trees and perform other public welfare activities, give in charity, carry out severe vows, worship the demigods, chant confidential mantras, visit holy places, or accept major and minor disciplinary injunctions. But even by performing such activities, one does not bring me under his control." Purport. The commentary of Srila Jiva Goswami on these two verses can be summarized as follows. One may serve the devotees of the Lord through ceremonial worship or by actual associating with them. Association with pure devotees is sufficient for self-realization because one can learn everything about spiritual advancements from such devotees. With perfect knowledge, one can achieve all that one desires, for the process of devotion and service immediately brings the blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotion and service is transcendental to the modes of nature, and therefore it appears mysterious to the souls conditioned by those modes. In the previous chapter, Lord Kṛṣṇa stated, Havi Sangnau Yajetamam. One may worship me in fire by offering oblations of ghee. Also in verse 38 of the previous chapter it was mentioned that one should construct parks, recreational places, orchards, vegetable gardens, and so on. These serve to attract people to the temples of Kṛṣṇa, where they may directly engage in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Such construction projects may be understood as pūrtam or public welfare activities. Although Lord Kṛṣṇa mentions in these two verses that association with his pure devotees is far more powerful than processes such as yoga, philosophical speculation, sacrifices, and public welfare activities, these secondary activities also please Lord Kṛṣṇa, but to a lesser extent. Especially they please the Lord when performed by devotees rather than by ordinary materialistic persons. Therefore the comparative term yata, according to proportion, is used. In other words, such practices as sacrifice, austerity, and philosophical study may help one become fit for rendering devotion service. And when such activities are performed by devotees aspiring for spiritual advancement, they become somewhat pleasing to the Lord. One may study the example of Vṛndāvana or vows. The injunction that one should fast on Ekadashi is a permanent vow for all Vaishnavas, and one should not conclude from these verses that one may neglect the Ekadashi vow. The superiority of satsanga or association with pure devotees in awarding the fruit of love of Godhead does not mean that one should give up other processes or that these secondary processes are not permanent factors in Bhakti Yoga. There are many Vedic injunctions instructing one to execute the Agnihotra sacrifice, and the modern-day followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also occasionally execute fire sacrifices. Such sacrifice is recommended by the Lord himself in the previous chapter, and therefore it should not be given up by the devotees of the Lord. By performing Vedic ritualistic and purificatory processes, one is gradually elevated to the platform of devotion service, whereupon one is able to directly worship the Absolute Truth. One Vedic injunction states, the result awarded for fasting continuously for 1 month in 6 different occasions can easily be achieved simply by accepting a handful of rice offered to Lord Vishnu. This facility is especially offered in the Kali Yuga. Nevertheless, regulated fasting on Ekadashi is not an impediment to spiritual advancement. Rather, it is a perpetual aspect of devotional service and can be considered an auxiliary principle supporting the main principle of worshipping Lord Kṛṣṇa and his devotees. Because such secondary principles help one become fit for executing the primary process of devotional service, they are also greatly beneficial. Therefore, such secondary principles are widely mentioned throughout the Vedic literature. It may be concluded that such secondary principles are essential for advancement in Krishna consciousness. And therefore one should never give up the principle of Vrata, the execution of prescribed vows. In the previous chapter, Srila Sridhar Swami mentions that the words Agyayaivam Gunandoshan indicate that a devotee should select Vedic principles that do not conflict with his service to the Lord. Many of the elaborate Vedic ceremonies and complicated procedures for fasting, demigod worship, and yoga practices cause great disturbance to the supreme process of Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu, hearing and chanting about the Lord. Therefore, they are rejected by the Vaishnavas. However, the process helpful to devotional service should be accepted. The example can be given of Maharaj Yudhishthira, who was instructed by the dying Bhishma Deva in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhishma instructs King Yudhishthira in Dana Dharma, or public acts of charity, Raja Dharma, all the duties of a king, Moksha Dharma, or duties for salvation, Sri Dharma, or duties for women, and ultimately Bhagavata Dharma, or pure devotional service to the Lord. Bhishma did not limit his discussion to Bhagavata Dharma because Lord Kṛṣṇa gave Maharaj Yudhishthira the devotional service of acting as a king. And to execute his service, Yudhishthira Maharaj required extensive knowledge of civic affairs. However, one who is not rendering such prescribed devotional service in society should not unnecessarily involve himself in the material world even by practice of Vedic rituals. Nothing should distract him from the ultimate goal of satisfying Lord Kṛṣṇa. The principle of not giving up prescribed vows may be further illustrated by the example of Maharaj Ambarisha. In the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that although Maharaj Ambarisha performed elaborate Vedic sacrifices, his goal was always the satisfaction of the Lord. The citizens in his kingdom did not desire to go to heaven because they were always hearing about the glories of Vaikuntha. Ambarish Maharaj, along with his queen, observed the vow of Ekadashi and Dvadashi for 1 year. Since Ambarish Maharaj is considered to be a great jewel among Vaishnavas, and since his behavior was always exemplary, it is definitely concluded that such vows as fasting on Ekadashi are imperative for Vaishnavas. It is further stated in Vedic literature, if due to negligence a Vaishnava does not fast on Ekadashi, then his worship of Lord Vishnu is useless, and he will go to hell. The members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness fast from grains and beans on Ekadashi, and this vow should always be observed by all of its members. If one falsely thinks that one may obtain the association of Lord Kṛṣṇa merely by great austerities, brilliant studies in Sanskrit literature, magnanimous acts of charity, etc., one's Krishna consciousness will be distorted and weakened. One should remember the example of Lord Chaitanya, who practiced Krishna consciousness by constantly hearing and chanting about the Lord Kṛṣṇa. If by fasting, study, austerity, or sacrifice one becomes more fit to participate in the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya, then such activities are also pleasing to Lord Kṛṣṇa. But the Lord clearly explains here that such activities can never become central in the practice of Bhakti Yoga. They must remain in an auxiliary relationship to the supreme process of satsanga, or association with pure devotees who hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Srila Madhvacharya has quoted from Vedic literature that if one offends the Lord's devotees and does not learn to associate with them, Lord Vishnu personally places barriers in the path of such a person so that he may not enter into the Lord's company. Text 3-6. Satsanjena hidaiteya yatutana mrgaha khagaha gandharva sarasonagaha siddhascharana guhyakaha vidyathara manusheshu vaishya sutrastriyon tyajaha rajastama prakrityas tasmin yuge yuge bahavo matpadam praptas Tvashtra kayathavadayaha vrasha parva balirbano mayaschatta vibhishanaha sugrivo hanuman riksho gajo grithro vanikpataha vyatha kubjavraje gopyo yagyapatnyas tatha pare. Translation. In every yuga, many living entities entangled in the modes of passion and ignorance gain the association of my devotees. Thus such living entities as the Daityas, Rakshasas, birds, beasts, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Siddhas, Charanas, Guhyakas, and Vidyadharas, as well as such lower class human beings as the Vaishyas, Shudras, women, and others, were able to achieve my supreme abode. Vritrasura, Prahlad Maharaj, and others like them also achieved my abode by association with my devotees, as did personalities such as Vrishaparva, Bali Maharaj, Banasura, Maya, Vibhishana, Sugriva, Hanuman, Jambavan, Gajendra, Jatayu, Taladhara, Dharmavati, Kubja, the gopis in Vṛndāvana, and the wives of the Brahmins who were performing sacrifice. Purport. The Lord has mentioned devotees such as the gopis in Vṛndāvana and also demons like Banasura to illustrate how he comes under the control of those who surrender to him. It is understood that devotees like the gopis and others mentioned here obtained pure love of Kṛṣṇa, whereas the demons generally obtained only salvation. Many demons were purified by association with devotees and came to accept devotion and service to the Lord as the most important among the various activities in their lives. But the exalted devotees like Prahlad and Bali Maharaj know nothing except devotion and service, which they accept as their very life. Still, the reformed demons are also mentioned so that readers of Srimad Bhagavatam will understand the enormous benefits one may achieve by associating with devotees of the Lord. The demon Vṛtrasura was the pious king Chitraketu in his previous life, during which he associated with Sri Narada Muni, Sri Angira Muni, and Lord Sankarsana. Prahlad Maharaj, being the son of Hiranyakashipu, is considered a Deity or demon. Yet while still in the womb of his mother, Kayatu, he associated with Narada Muni by sound vibration. The demon Vrishaparva was abandoned by his mother at birth, but he was raised by a Muni and became a devotee of Lord Vishnu. Bali Maharaj associated with his grandfather Prahlad and also with Lord Vamanadeva. Bali Maharaj's son Banasura was saved by association with his father and Lord Shiva. He also associated with Lord Kṛṣṇa personally when the Lord cut off all but 2 of his 1,000 arms, which had been awarded as a benediction by Lord Shiva. Understanding the glories of Lord Kṛṣṇa, Banasura also became a great devotee. The demon Maya Danava constructed an assembly house for the Pandavas and also associated with Lord Kṛṣṇa himself, eventually achieving the shelter of the Lord. Vibhishana was a pious natured demon, the brother of Ravana, and he associated with Hanuman and Ramachandra. Sugriva, Hanuman, Jambavan, and Gajendra are examples of animals who achieved the mercy of the Lord. Jambavan or Riksharaja was a member of a race of monkeys. He personally associated with Lord Kṛṣṇa, fighting with him over the Shamantaka jewel. The elephant Gajendra in a previous life had association with devotees, and at the end of his life as Gajendra, he was personally saved by the Lord. Jatayu, the bird, who at the cost of his own life assisted Lord Ramachandra, associated with Sri Garuda and Maharaj Dasharatha, as well as other devotees in Rama Lila. He also personally met with Sita and Lord Rama. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the association that the Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nagas, Sitas, Charanas, Guhyakas, and Vidyadharas had with the devotees is not very prominent and does not need to be mentioned. Vanipatta is a Vaishya, and his story is mentioned in the Mahabharata in connection with the pride of Jalali Muni. The importance of association with devotees illustrated in the story of Dharma Vyadha, the non-violent hunter as described in the Varaha Purana. In a previous life he somehow became a Brahmana Rakshasa or Brahmana ghost, but was eventually saved. In a previous Kali Yuga he had the association of a Vaishnava king named Vasu. The lady Kubja associated directly with Lord Kṛṣṇa, and in her previous birth she had associated with Sri Narada Muni. The gopis of Vṛndāvana rendered service to saintly persons in their previous birth. Having had ample association with devotees, they became gopis in Vṛndāvana in their next lives, and associated with the eternal liberated gopis who had descended there. They also had association with Tulsideva, Vrindadevi, the wives of the Brahmins performing sacrifice, had association with women sent by Lord Kṛṣṇa to sell flower garlands and betel nuts, and heard about the Lord from them. Text 7. Tena tita shruti gana no pashita mahatmanaha avratatapta tapasaha matsanganmam upagataha. Translation. The persons I have mentioned did not undergo serious studies of the Vedic literature, nor did they worship great saintly persons, nor did they execute severe vows or austerities. Simply by association with me and my devotees they achieved me. Purport. Study of the Vedic literature, worship of those who teach the Shruti mantras, acceptance of vows and austerities, etc., as mentioned previously, are helpful processes that please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, however, the Lord again explains that all such processes are secondary to the essential process of associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees. By other processes one may gain the association of the Lord and His devotees, which will actually give the perfection of life. The word Matsangat can also be read as Satsangat with the same meaning. In the reading Matsangal, from association with me, Mat is also understood to indicate those who are mine, or the devotees. Srila Sridhar Swami mentions that a pure devotee can advance in Krishna consciousness by his own association, since simply by associating with his own activities and consciousness, he associates with the Lord. Text 8. Kevalena hi bhavena gopyoga vanagamrgaha yene muthadiyo nagaha siddhamam miyur ajasa. Translation. The inhabitants of Vṛndāvana, including the gopis, cows, unmoving creatures such as the twin Arjuna trees, animals, living entities with stunned consciousness such as bushes and thickets, and snakes such as Kaliya, all achieved the perfection of life by unalloyed love for me, and thus very easily achieved me. Purport. Although innumerable living entities achieved liberation by association with the Lord and His devotees, many such personalities also executed other processes such as austerity, charity, philosophical speculation, and so on. As we have already explained, such procedures are secondary, but the inhabitants of Vṛndāvana, such as the gopis, did not know anything except Lord Kṛṣṇa, and their whole purpose in life was simply to love Lord Kṛṣṇa, as indicated here by the words Kevalena hi bhavena. Even the trees, bushes, and hills such as Govardhan loved Lord Kṛṣṇa, as the Lord explains to his brother Sri Baladeva in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Aho ami deva varamararchitam padam bhujate sumanaha phalarhanam namanti upadhyaya shikhabhiratmanas tamopahatyai tarujanma yatkritam. My dear brother Baladeva, just see how these trees are bowing down with their branches and offering obeisances to your lotus feet, which are worshipable even by the demigods. Indeed, my dear brother, you are the Supreme God, and thus these trees have produced fruits and flowers as an offering to you. Although a living entity takes birth as a tree due to mode of ignorance, certainly by such a birth in Vṛndāvana, these trees are destroying all darkness in their lives by serving your lotus feet. Although many living entities achieved the mercy of Lord Kṛṣṇa by associating with the Lord and His devotees in various ways, those who take Lord Kṛṣṇa as everything are situated in the highest process of spiritual realization. Therefore the Lord has not bothered to mention in this verse those who achieved perfection through mixed processes, but rather glorifies the unalloyed devotees of Vṛndāvana headed by the gopis who knew nothing but Lord Kṛṣṇa. The residents of Vṛndāvana were so satisfied in their relationship with Lord Kṛṣṇa that they did not pollute their loving service with mental speculation or fruitive desires. The gopis served Lord Kṛṣṇa in the conjugal rasa relationship, whereas, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the cows loved Lord Kṛṣṇa in Vatsalya rasa, or the love of parents for a child, because the cows were always supplying milk to child Kṛṣṇa. Unmoving objects like Govardhan Hill and other hills and mountains loved Kṛṣṇa as a friend, and the ordinary animals, trees and bushes of Vṛndāvana loved Lord Kṛṣṇa as a dasya rasa, or with love of a servant for his master. Snakes like Kaliya also developed this love in servitude, and after relishing their loving service to Lord Kṛṣṇa, all of them went back to Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, all those inhabitants of Vṛndāvana should be considered eternal liberated souls, as expressed by the word siddha, which means having achieved the perfection of life. Text 9. Yam na yogena sankhena dana vrata tapo dvaraihi Vyakya svadhyaya sanyasai prapnyut yatnavanapi. Translation. Even though one engaged with great endeavor in the mystic yoga system, philosophical speculation, charity, vows, penance, ritualistic sacrifice, teaching of Vedic mantras to others, personal study of the Vedas, or the renounced order of life, still one cannot achieve me. Purport. Lord Kṛṣṇa here explains that it is very difficult to achieve his personal association, even for one who seriously endeavors to reach the absolute truth. The inhabitants of Vṛndāvana, such as the gopis and cows, were always living with Lord Kṛṣṇa, and thus their association is called satsanga. Anyone who favorably living with the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes sat or eternal, and thus the association of such a person can immediately award other pure devotion service to the Lord. There is an austerity called Chandrayana, a fast in which one's intake of food is diminished by one mouthful each day as the moon wanes, and increased in the same way as the moon waxes. Similarly, there are painstaking ritualistic sacrifice and grueling studies of the Sanskrit Vedic mantras, which one may also teach to others. All these tedious activities cannot award the highest perfection of life unless one gets the causeless mercy of the pure devotees of the Lord, as stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharmaha svanushtitaha pumsam vishvaksena kathasuyaha notpadayet yadi ratim shramaye vahi kevalam. The occupational duties a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the Personality of Godhead. Text 10. Ramena sartham mathuram pranite svabhalkina mai anurakta chittaha Vigatha bhavena neme viyoga tivradhayonyam dadrushu sukhyaya. Translation. The residents of Vṛndāvana, headed by the gopis, were always completely attached to me with deepest love. Therefore, when my uncle Akrura brought my brother Balaram and me to the city of Mathura, the residents of Vṛndāvana suffered extreme mental distress because of separation from me, and could not find any other source of happiness. Purport. This verse especially describes the sentiments of the cowherd girls of Vṛndāvana. The gopis and Lord Kṛṣṇa here reveals the incomparable love they felt for him. As explained in the 10th canto, Lord Kṛṣṇa's uncle Akrura, sent by Kamsa, came to Vṛndāvana and took Kṛṣṇa and Balaram back to Mathura for a wrestling event. The gopis loved Lord Kṛṣṇa so much that in his absence their consciousness was completely absorbed in spiritual love. Thus their Krishna consciousness is considered the highest perfectionless stage of life. They were always expecting that Lord Krishna would finish his business of killing demons and return to them, and therefore their anxiety was an extremely moving, heart-rending display of love. Anyone desiring true happiness must take to the devotion and service of the Lord in the spirit of the gopis, giving up everything for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Text 11. Tastaha kshapaha prishta tamina nita mayaiva Vṛndāvana gocharena kshanartha vattavaha punar angatasam Tina Maya Kalpasama Bhabuhu. Translation. Dear Uddhava, all of those nights that the gopis spent with me, they are most dearly beloved in the land of Vṛndāvana, seemed to them to pass in less than a moment. Bereft of my association, however, the gopis felt that those same nights dragged on forever, as if each night were equal to a day of Brahma. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami comments as follows: the gopis suffered extreme anxiety in the absence of Lord Krishna, and though outwardly appearing bewildered, they actually achieved the highest perfection stage of samadhi. Their consciousness was intensely and intimately attached to Lord Krishna, and by such Krishna consciousness, their own bodies seemed very far away from them. Even though people normally consider their body to be their closest possession, in fact, the gopis did not think about their own existence. Although a young woman normally considers her husband and children to be her dearest possessions, the gopis did not even consider the existence of their so-called families, nor could they think of this world or life after death. Indeed, they were not at all aware of these things. Just like great sages who become detached from the names and forms of the material nature, the gopis could not think of anything because they were wrapped in loving remembrance of Lord Krishna. Just as rivers enter the ocean, similarly the gopis completely merged into consciousness of Lord Krishna through intense love. Thus a day of Brahma seemed like a single moment for the gopis when Lord Krishna was present with them, and a single moment seemed like a day of Brahma when Lord Krishna was absent. The Krishna consciousness of the gopis is the perfection of spiritual life, and the symptoms of such perfection are described here. Text 12. Tanavidanmai anusangabadha tiyaha swam atmanam adastatedam yatha samathau munau toye nadya pravishta ivanama rupe. Translation. My dear Uddhava, just as great sages in yoga trance merge into self-realization, like rivers merging into the ocean, and are thus not aware of material names and forms, similarly the gopis of Vṛndāvana were so completely attached to me within their minds that they could not think of their own bodies, or of this world, or of their future lives. Their entire consciousness was simply bound up in me. Purport. The words Swam Atmanam Adastatedam indicate that while for ordinary persons one's personal body is the most near and dear thing, the gopis consider their own bodies to be distant and remote, just as a yogi in samadhi trance considers ordinary things around his physical body or his physical body itself to be most remote. When Krishna played on his flute late at night, the gopis immediately forgot everything about their so-called husbands and children and went to dance with Lord Krishna in the forest. These controversial points have been clearly explained in the book Kṛṣṇa by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The basic explanation is that Lord Kṛṣṇa is the source of everything, and the gopis are the Lord's own potency. Thus there is no discrepancy or immortality in the Almighty Personality of Godhead's loving affairs with his own manifest potency, the gopis, who happen to be the most beautiful young girls in the creation of God. There is no illusion on the part of the yogis, for they are so attracted to Kṛṣṇa, Lord Kṛṣṇa, that they do not care to think of anything else. Since all existence is situated within the body of Lord Kṛṣṇa, there is no loss for the gopis when they concentrate on the Lord. It is the nature of very deep love to exclude all objects except the beloved. However, in the material world, where we try to love a limited temporary object such as our nation, family, or personal body, our exclusion of other objects constitutes ignorance. But when our love is intensely concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of everything, such concentration cannot be considered ignorance or small mindedness. The example of the sages in Samadhi is given here only to illustrate exclusive concentration on a single object. Otherwise, there is no comparison between the ecstatic love of the gopis and the dry meditation of the yogis, who merely try to understand that they are not their material bodies. Since the yogis had no material bodies to become detached from, and were personally dancing with and embracing the absolute truth, one can never compare the exalted position of the ghost to that of a mere yogis. It is stated that the bliss of impersonal Brahman realization cannot be compared to an atomic fragment of the blissful ocean of love of Kṛṣṇa. Intimate attachment is like a strong rope that binds the mind and heart. In material life we are bound to that which is temporary and illusory, and therefore such binding of the heart causes great pain. However, if we bind our minds and hearts to the eternal Lord Kṛṣṇa, the reservoir of all pleasure and beauty, then our hearts will expand unlimitedly in the ocean of transcendental bliss. One should understand that the gopis were not in any way inclined toward impersonal meditation, in which one denies the reality of variegated creation. The gopis did not deny anything. They simply loved Kṛṣṇa and could not think of anything else. They only rejected whatever impeded their concentration on Lord Kṛṣṇa, cursing with their own eyelids, which blinked, and thus removed Kṛṣṇa from their sight for a split second. Srila Rupa Goswami has stated that all sincere devotees of the Lord should have the courage to remove from their lives anything that impedes their progressive march back home, back to Godhead. Text 13. Mat kamaru ramanam jaram ashvarupa vido balaha brahmamam paramam prapuhu sangachata sahasrasaha. Translation. All those hundreds of thousands of gopis, understanding me to be their most charming lover and ardently desiring me in that way, were unaware of my actual position, yet by intimately associating with me, the gopis attained me, the Supreme Absolute Truth. Purport. The words Aswarupavidaha, not understanding my actual position or form, indicate that the lovely gopis were so completely absorbed in conjugal love for Lord Kṛṣṇa that they were not aware of the Lord's unlimited potency as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this as other meaning of the word Ashvarupa Vidah. In Sanskrit, the word vid also means to acquire. Thus, Ashvarupa Vidah indicates that the gopis, like other pure devotees of the Lord, were not interested in achieving Sarupya Mukti, the liberation of acquiring a bodily form similar to the Lord's. Were the gopis to obtain a bodily form like the Lord's, how could the Lord execute his conjugal pastimes of dancing with the gopis and embracing them? Since the gopis had realized their eternal spiritual forms as servitors of the Lord, The word Swarupa also may indicate their own spiritual bodies, and thus Ashvarupa Vidaha means that the gopis never thought, as materialists do, of their own bodily beauty. Although the gopis are the most beautiful girls in the Lord's creation, they never thought of their own bodies, but rather were always meditating on the transcendental body of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Although we cannot imitate the gopis' exalted conjugal feelings, we can follow their superb example of practical Kṛṣṇa consciousness. They naturally took shelter of Lord Kṛṣṇa and achieved the highest perfection of life. Text 14 to 15. Tasmat tvam uthavot srijya chodanam prati chodanam pravrittim cha nivrittim cha shrotavyam shrutam eva cha mamekam eva sharanam atmanam sarvadehinam yahi sarvatma bhavena maya syahi akuto bhayaha. Translation. Therefore, my dear Uddhava, abandon the Vedic mantras as well as the procedures of supplementary Vedic literatures and their positive and negative injunctions. Disregard that which has been heard and that which is to be heard. Simply take shelter of me alone, for I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, situated within the heart of all conditioned souls. Take shelter of me wholeheartedly, and by my grace be free from fear in all circumstances. Purport. Sri Uddhava inquired from the Lord Kṛṣṇa about the symptoms of saintly persons and liberated souls, and the Lord has replied in terms of different levels of spiritual advancement, distinguishing between those who are able to understand Lord Kṛṣṇa to be the principal goal of life and those loving devotees who accept Lord Kṛṣṇa and devotional service to him as the only goal of life. Lord Kṛṣṇa also mentioned that he is captured by his loving devotees and even by those who sincerely associate with his loving devotees. Among all the devotees, the gopis of Vṛndāvana were described by the Lord as having achieved such a rare state of pure devotional service that Lord Kṛṣṇa personally feels constantly indebted to them. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Kṛṣṇa previously kept the gopis' love for him concealed in his heart because of its confidential nature and the Lord's own gravity. Finally, however, even Lord Kṛṣṇa could not remain silent about the intense love of the gopis, and thus in these verses the Lord reveals to Uddhava how the gopis loved him in Vṛndāvana and brought him fully under their control. The Lord would relax in secret places with the loving gopis, and by conjugal spontaneous affection the greatest love was exchanged between them. As explained by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot achieve the perfection of life merely by renouncing the material world or by executing ordinary sectarian religious principles. One must actually understand the identity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by associating with his pure devotees, one must learn to love the Lord in his personal original form. This love may be expressed in either the conjugal, parental, fraternal, or serving rasa, or relationship. The Lord has elaborately explained to Uddhava the symptom of philosophical analysis of the material world, and now he clearly concludes that it is useless for Uddhava to waste time in further activities or mental speculation. All of the gopis. Actually, Lord Kṛṣṇa is hinting that Uddhava should assimilate the example of the gopis and try to advance further in Kṛṣṇa consciousness by following in the footsteps of the cowherd damsels of Vraja. Any conditioned soul who is unsatisfied with the cruel laws of nature, which impose disease, old age, and death, should understand that Lord Kṛṣṇa can deliver can deliver all living beings from the problems of material existence. There is no need to entangle oneself in an unauthorized sectarian rituals, injunctions, or prohibitions. One should simply surrender to Lord Kṛṣṇa, following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Kṛṣṇa himself, by the authorized regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness, one easily achieves the spiritual perfection. Text 16. Shri Uddhava Vacha Samshayah Shrinvato Vacham Tava Yogeshwareshwara Nanivartata Atmasto Yena Brahmyati Me Manaha. Translation. Shri Uddhava said, O Lord of all masters, O mystic power, I have heard your words, but the doubt in my heart does not go away, thus my mind is bewildered. Purport. In the first verse of the 10th chapter of this canto, the Lord stated that one should take shelter of him and execute one's duties within the Varnashram system without material desire. Uddhava interpreted this statement as recommending karma, mishra, bhakti, or devotion service, mixed with a tendency toward further activity. It is a fact that until one understands Lord Kṛṣṇa to be everything, it is not possible to retire from ordinary worldly duties. Rather, one is encouraged to offer the fruits of such work to the Lord. In verse 4 of the 10th chapter, the Lord recommended that one retire from worldly duties and systematically cultivate knowledge, accepting him as the Supreme. Uddhava understood this instruction to indicate dhyana, mishra, bhakti, or devotion service to the Lord mixed with the secondary desire to accumulate knowledge. Beginning with verse 35 of the 10th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the process of material conditioning and liberation from material life. The Lord replied elaborately, stating that without devotion and service to the process of philosophical speculation can never be performed. In chapter 11, verse 18, the Lord emphasized the importance of faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in verse 23, Kṛṣṇa extensively widened his discussion of devotion and service, emphasizing that one should be faithful and hear and chant the glories of the Lord. The Lord concluded that both the development and perfection of devotion and service depend on association with the pure devotees. In verse 26 in the 11th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the actual ways and means of advance of devotional service, and Uddhava the symptoms of devotional perfection. 11th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the actual ways and means of devotional service and about the symptoms of devotional perfection. And in verse 48, Lord Kṛṣṇa stated that unless one takes to the process of devotion and service, one's attempt for liberation will be useless. One must associate with the devotees of the Lord and follow in their footsteps. Finally, in verse 14 of this chapter, the Lord categorically rejected the path of furtive activities and mental speculation, and in verse 15 recommended that one exclusive surrender unto him with all one's heart. Having received such elaborate and technical instructions on the personal affection, perfection of life, Uddhava is bewildered that his mind is afflicted with doubt about what he should actually do. Lord Kṛṣṇa has described many procedures and the regulator of such and results of such procedures, all of which ultimately lead to the single goal of Lord Kṛṣṇa himself. Vṛndāvana therefore desires that Lord Kṛṣṇa state in simple terms that should be done. Arjuna makes a similar request of the Lord at the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. According to Śrīla Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Vṛndāvana is situated here. Vṛndāvana is stating here, my friend Kṛṣṇa, first you recommend that I perform worldly activities within the Varnashrama path, Varnashrama system, and then you advise that I reject such activities and take to the path of devotion, path of philosophical research. Now, rejecting the path of dhyana, you recommend that I simply surrender unto you in bhakti yoga. If I accept your decision, in the future you may again go back to your original point, and therefore worldly activities. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11, Chapter 12, Text 16. Shri Uddhava Vacha Samshayaha Shrinvato Vacham Tava Yogeshwarishvara Na Nivartata Atmasto Yena Vramyati Me Manaha. Translation. Shri Uddhava said, O Lord of all masters of mystic power, I have heard your words, but the doubt in my heart does not go away. Thus my mind is bewildered. Purport. In the first verse of the 10th chapter of this canto, the Lord stated that one should take shelter of Him and execute one's duties within the Varnashram system without material desire. Uddhava interpreted this statement as recommending karma mishra bhakti or devotional service mixed with a tendency toward fruitive activities. It's a fact that until one understands Lord Kṛṣṇa to be everything, it is not possible to retire from ordinary worldly duties. Neither one is encouraged to offer the fruits of such work to the Lord. In verse 4 of the 10th chapter, the Lord recommended that one retire from worldly duties and systematically cultivate knowledge, accepting Him as the Supreme. Uddhava understood this instruction to indicate jnana mishra bhakti or devotional service to the Lord, mixed with the secondary desire to accumulate knowledge. Beginning with verse 35 of the 10th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the process of material conditioning and liberation from material life. The Lord replied elaborately, stating that without devotional service, the process of philosophical speculation can never be perfected. In chapter 11, verse 18, the Lord emphasized the importance of faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in verse 23, Kṛṣṇa extensively widened his discussion of devotional service, emphasizing that one should be faithful and hear and chant the glories of the Lord. The Lord concluded that both the development and perfection of devotional service depend on association with the devotees. In verse 26 of the 11th chapter, Uddhava inquired about the actual ways and means of devotional service, and about the symptoms of devotional perfection. And in verse 48, Lord Kṛṣṇa stated that unless one takes to the process of devotional service, one's attempt for liberation will be useless. One must associate with the devotees of the Lord and follow in their footsteps. Finally, in verse 14 of this chapter, in verse 48, Lord Kṛṣṇa stated that unless one takes to the process of devotional service, one's attempt for liberation will be useless. One must associate with the devotees of the Lord and follow in their footsteps. Finally, in verse 14 of this chapter, the Lord categorically rejected the path of fruitive activities and mental speculation, and in verse 15 recommended that one exclusively surrender unto Him with all one's heart. Having received such elaborate and technical instructions on the perfection of life, Uddhava is bewildered and his mind is afflicted with doubt about what he should actually do. Lord Kṛṣṇa has described many procedures, and the result of such procedures, all of which ultimately lead to the single goal of Lord Kṛṣṇa himself. Uddhava therefore desires the Lord Krishna state in simple terms what should be done. Arjuna makes a similar request of the Lord at the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Uddhava is stating here, "My dear friend Krishna, first you recommended that I perform worldly activities within the Varnashrama system, and then you advised that I reject such activities and take to the path of philosophical research. Now rejecting the path of jnana, you recommend that I simply surrender unto you in bhakti yoga. If I accept your decision in the future, you may again go back to your original point and recommend worldly activities." By this boldness in disclosing his mind, Uddhava reveals his intimate friendship with Lord Krishna. Text 17. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Saisha Jiva Vivara Prasutihi Pranena Ghoshena Guham Pravishtaha Mano Mayam Sukshmam Upitya Rupam Matrasvaro Varnaiti Stavishtaha. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Uddhava, the Supreme Lord gives life to every living being and is situated within the heart along with the life air and primal sound vibration. The Lord can be perceived in his subtle form within the heart by one's mind. Since the Lord controls the minds of everyone, even great demigods like Lord Shiva, the Supreme Lord also assumes a gross form as the various sounds of the Vedas, composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations." Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows on the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was bewildered and doubtful because Lord Krishna explained many different processes such as devotional service, speculative knowledge, renunciation, mystic yoga, austerities, pious duties, and so on. However, all of these processes are meant to help the living entities obtain the shelter of Lord Krishna, and ultimately no Vedic process should be understood in any other way. Thus Lord Krishna explained the entire Vedic system, placing everyone in proper order. In fact, Lord Krishna was surprised that Uddhava foolishly thought that he was meant to practice every process as if each method were meant simply for him. Lord Krishna therefore wants to inform his devotee, "My dear Uddhava, when I told you that analytic knowledge is to be practiced, pious duties are to be performed, devotional service is obligatory, yoga procedures must be observed, austerities are to be executed, etc. I was instructing all living entities using you as my immediate audience. That which I have spoken, and speaking now and will speak in the future should be understood as guidance for all living entities in different situations. How could you possibly think that you were meant to practice all of the different Vedic processes? I accept you as you are now, my pure devotee. You are not supposed to execute all of these processes." Thus, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Lord, whose lighter-hearted and encouraging words reveals to Uddhava the deep purpose behind the variety of Vedic procedures. Lord Krishna became manifest from the mouth of Lord Brahma in the form of the Vedas. The word Vivara Prasuti in this verse also indicates that the Lord is manifest within the Adharadi chakras, situated within the body of Lord Brahma. The word Goshena means subtle sound, and Guham Pravishtaha also indicates that the Lord Krishna enters within the Adhara chakra. The Lord can further be perceived within one's chakras, such as Manipuraka chakra located around the navel, and the Visuddha chakra. The Sanskrit alphabet is composed of short and long vowels and consonants, pronounced with high and low tones, and utilizing these vibrations, the different branches of Vedic literatures are manifested as a gross form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Bhagavad Gita, such literatures deal mostly with the three modes of material nature: Traigunya Visha Veda Nishtraigunyo Bhavarjuna Srila Shridhar Swami explains that due to the control of the illusory energy, Maya, the personality of Godhead, appears to the conditioned souls as part of the material universe. The imagined imposition of gross and subtle material qualities on the personality of Godhead is called avidya or ignorance, and through such ignorance the living entity considers himself to be the doer of his own activities and becomes bound up in the network of karma. The Vedas therefore order an entangled soul to observe positive and negative injunctions to purify his existence. These procedures are called pravritti marga, or the path of regulative fruitive activities. When one has purified one's existence, one gives up his gross stage of fruitive activities because it is detrimental to the practice of pure devotion service. By firm faith, one may then worship the personality of Godhead. One who has developed perfect Kṛṣṇa consciousness no longer has to perform ritualistic duties. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Tasya kaviryam na vidyate. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this verse may be understood in another way. The word Jiva indicates Lord Kṛṣṇa, who gives the life to the residents of Vṛndāvana, and Vivara Prashruti indicates that although Lord Kṛṣṇa eternally performs his pastimes in the spiritual world, beyond the vision of the conditioned souls, he also enters within the material universe to display those same pastimes. The words Guham Pravishta indicates that after displaying such pastimes, the Lord withdraws them and enters into his unmanifest pastimes, or those pastimes not manifest to the conditioned souls. In this case, Matra indicates the transcendental senses of the Lord, Swara indicates the Lord's transcendental sound vibration and singing, and the word Varna indicates the transcendental form of the Lord. The word Stha-Vishta, or gross manifestation, means that the Lord becomes manifest in the material world, even to those devotees who are not completely advanced in Kṛṣṇa consciousness and whose vision is not completely purified. Manomaya indicates that somehow or other Lord Kṛṣṇa is to be kept within one's mind, and for the non-devotees Lord Kṛṣṇa is Sukshma, or most subtle, because he cannot be known. Thus different acharyas have glorified Lord Kṛṣṇa in different ways through the transcendental sound vibration of this verse. Text 18. Yathanavaha khenila panturushma balena daruni athimathaya manaha anuhu prajato avisha sametate tathaiva me vyaktiriva iyam kivani. Translation. When sticks of kindling wood are vigorously rubbed together, heat is produced by contact with air, and a spark of fire appears. Once the fire is kindled, ghee is added and the fire blazes. Similarly, I become manifest in the sound vibration of the Vedas purport. Lord Kṛṣṇa here explains the most confidential meaning of Vedic knowledge. The Vedas first regulate ordinary material work and channel the fruits into ritualistic sacrifice, which ostensibly reward the performer with future benefits. The real purpose of this sacrifice, however, is to accustom a materialistic worker to offering the fruits of his work to a superior Vedic authority. An expert fruitative worker gradually exhausts the possibilities of material enjoyment and naturally gravitates toward the superior stage of philosophical speculation on his existential situation. By increased knowledge, one becomes aware of the unlimited glories of the Supreme, and gradually takes to the process of loving devotion service to the transcendental absolute truth. Lord Kṛṣṇa is the goal of Vedic knowledge, as the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaischa sarvair aham ve eva vedya. The Lord gradually becomes manifest in the progression of Vedic rituals, just as fire is gradually manifest by the rubbing of firewood. The words Havisha Samit Hate, the fire increases by addition of ghee, indicate that by the progressive advancement of Vedic sacrifice, The fire of spiritual knowledge gradually blazes, illuminating everything and destroying the chain of fruitive work. Lord Kṛṣṇa considers Vṛndāvana to be the most qualified person to hear this elaborate transcendental knowledge. Therefore, the Lord mercifully instructs Vṛndāvana so that he may enlighten the sages at Bhadrakarshama, thus fulfilling the purpose of the sages' lives. Text 19. Evam gadihi karma gatir visargo rano rasodrik sparshaha shrutischa sankalpa vijnanam athabhimanaha sutram rajaha sattvatamo vikharaha. Translation. The functions of the working senses, the organ of speech, the hands, the legs, the genitals, and the anus, and the functions of the knowledge-acquiring senses, the nose, tongue, eyes, skin, and ears, along with the functions of the subtle senses of mind, intelligence, consciousness, and false ego, as well as the functions of the subtle pradhana and the interaction of the three modes of material nature. All this should be understood as my materially manifest form. Purport. By the word gadi or speech, the Lord concludes his discussion about his manifestation as Vedic vibrations and describes the functions of the other working senses along with the knowledge-acquiring senses, the subtle functions of consciousness, pradhana, and the interaction of the three modes of material nature. A Krishna-conscious person sees the entire material world as a manifestation of the Lord's potencies. There is therefore no legitimate scope for material sense gratification, because everything is an expansion from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and belongs to Him. One who can understand the expansion of the Lord within subtle and gross material manifestations gives up his desire to live in this world. In the spiritual world, everything is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. The exclusive feature of the material world is that here the living entity dreams that he is Lord. The sane person, giving up his hallucination, finds no attractive features in the kingdom of Maya, and therefore returns home back to Godhead. Text 20. Ayam hi jivastri vrit abhyayonir avyakta eko vayasa sa adyaha virshita vilishta vislishta shaktir bahudheva vati bijani yonim pratipadya yadvat. Translation. When many seeds are placed in an agricultural field, innumerable manifestations of trees, bushes, vegetables, and so on will arise from a single source, the soil, similar to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives life to all and is eternal, originally exists beyond the scope of the cosmic manifestation. In the course of time, however, the Lord, who is the resting place of the three modes of nature and the source of the universal lotus flower, in which the cosmic manifestation takes place, divides his material potencies and thus appears to be manifest in innumerable forms, although he is one. Purport. Srila Virargacharya comments that one may question as to whom the cosmic manifestation considers of demigods, men, consisting of demigods, men, animals, planets, space, etc., actually belongs. Lord Kṛṣṇa now eradicates any doubt about the source of the cosmic manifestation. The word Trivrit indicates that the three modes of nature are not independent but are under superior control. The suffix Rit means the Vartanam or existence of the three modes of material nature within the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Analyzing the term Abhyayoni, Ab indicates water and Ja indicates birth. Thus Abja means the complex material universe, which sprouts from Garbhodakasha Vishnu, who lives in the Garbhodaka ocean, Yoni or source, indicates the personality of Godhead, and thus Abhyayoni means that the Lord is the source of all cosmic manifestations. Indeed, all creation takes place within the Lord. Since the three modes of material nature are under the superior control of the Lord, material objects helplessly undergoes creation and annihilation within the universal shell by the will of the Lord. The term Avyakta indicates the Lord's subtle spiritual form, which exists alone before the material creation. The Lord's original form, being spiritual, does not undergo birth, transformation, or death. Eternal, in the course of time, the Lord's material potencies are divided and manifest as bodies, bodily paraphernalia, sense objects, bodily expansions, false ego, and false proprietorship. Thus, the Lord expands his conscious living potency called Jiva Shakti, which is manifest in innumerable material forms such as those of man, demigods, animals, and so on. From the example of the seeds sown in an agricultural field, we can understand that innumerable manifestations may arise from a single source. Similarly, although the Lord is one, he becomes manifest in innumerable forms through the expansion of his different potencies. Text 21. Yasminidam pūrtam otam pato yatha tantu vitani samstaha yaesha samsara taruhu puranaha karmatmakaha pushpa pale prashute. Translation: just as woven cloth rests on the expansion of lengthwise and crosswise threads, similarly the entire universe is expanded on the lengthwise and crosswise potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is situated within him. The conditioned soul has been accepting material bodies since time immemorial, and these bodies are like great trees sustaining one's material existence. Just as a tree first blossoms and then produces fruit, similarly the tree of material existence becomes material body, produces the various results of material existence. Purport: before a tree produces fruit, blossoms appear. Similarly, the word pushpa phale, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, indicates the happiness and distress of material existence. One's material life may appear to be blossoming, but ultimately there will appear the bitter fruits of old age, death, and other catastrophes. Attachment to the material body, which is always inclined towards sense gratification, is the root cause of material existence, and it is therefore called samsara taru. The tendency to exploit the external energy of the Supreme Lord has existed since time immemorial. As expressed by the words Purana Karmatmakaha, the material universe is an expansion of the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord, and is always dependent on him and non-different from him. This simple understanding can relieve the conditioned souls from endless wandering in the unhappy kingdom of Maya. The material universe is an expansion of the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord, and is always dependent on him and non-different from him. This simple understanding can relieve the conditioned souls from endless wandering in the unhappy kingdom of Maya. The word pushpa phale may also be understood as meaning sense gratification and liberation. The tree of material existence will be further explained in the following verse. Text 22 to 23. Dveyasya bija satamula trinalaha Panchaskandaha pancharasa prasutihi dasaika sakoti suparnanidas trivalkalodi dvipalorkam pravishtaha adanti chaikam palam asya grithra Grame charayekam aranyavasaha hamsayekam bahurupamichair maya mayam vedasa veda vedam. Translation: this tree of material existence has 2 seeds, hundreds of roots, 3 lower trunks, and 5 upper trunks. It produces 5 flavors and has 11 branches and a nest made by 2 birds. The tree is covered by 3 types of bark, gives 2 fruits, and extends up to the sun. Those lusty after material enjoyment and dedicated to family life enjoy one of the tree's fruits, and swan like men in the renounced order of life enjoy the other fruit. One who, with the help of the bona fide spiritual master, can understand this tree to be a manifestation of the potency of the one supreme truth appearing in many forms, actually knows the meaning of the Vedic literature. Purport. The 2 seeds of this tree are sinful and pious activities, and the hundreds of fruits are the living entities' innumerable material desires which chain them to material existence. The 3 lower trunks represent the 3 modes of material nature, and the 5 upper trunks represent the 5 gross material elements. The tree produces 5 flavors: sound, form, touch, taste, and aroma, and has 11 branches: the 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, and the mind. 2 birds, named the individual soul and the supersoul, have made their nest in this tree, and the 3 types of bark are air, bile, and mucus, the constituent elements of the body. The 2 fruits of this tree are happiness and distress. Those who are busy trying to enjoy the company of beautiful women, money, and other luxurious aspects of illusion enjoy the fruit of unhappiness. One should remember that even in the heavenly planets there is anxiety and death. Those who have renounced material goals and taken to the path of spiritual enlightenment enjoy the fruit of happiness. One who takes the assistance of bona fide spiritual masters can understand that this elaborate tree is simply the manifestation of the external potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is ultimately one without the second. If one can see the Supreme Lord as the ultimate cause of everything, then his knowledge is perfect. Otherwise, one is entangled in Vedic rituals or Vedic speculation without knowledge of the Supreme Lord. He has not achieved the perfection of life. Text 24. Evam guru pasanaye yaika bhaktya vidya kutharena sitena dhiraha vivrishcha jivasayam apramattaha sampadaya chatmanam athatyajastram. Translation. With steady intelligence, you should develop unalloyed devotional service by careful worship of the spiritual master. And with the sharpened axe of transcendental knowledge, you should cut off the subtle material covering of the soul. Upon realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you should then give up that axe of analytic knowledge. With steady intelligence, you should develop unalloyed devotional service by careful worship of the spiritual master. And with the sharpened axe of transcendental knowledge, you should cut off the subtle material covering of the soul. Upon realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you should then give up that axe of analytic knowledge. Purport. Because Uddhava had achieved the perfection of personal association with Lord Kṛṣṇa, there was no need for him to maintain the mentality of a conditioned soul, and thus, as described here by the word sampadya chatmanam, Uddhava could personally serve the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual world. Indeed, Uddhava requested this opportunity at the beginning of this great conversation. As stated here, Guru Pasana Yeka Bhaktya, one can achieve pure devotional service by worshipping a bona fide spiritual master. It is not recommended here that one give up pure devotional service of one spiritual master, that it is clearly stated by the words Vidya Kutharena, that one should cultivate knowledge of the material world as described by Lord Kṛṣṇa in this chapter. One should fully understand that each and every aspect of the material creation is the expansion of the illusory potency of the Lord. Such knowledge works as a sharpened axe to cut down the roots of material existence. In this way, even the stubborn, subtle body created by the three modes of nature is cut to pieces and one becomes apramata or sane and cautious in Krishna consciousness. Lord Kṛṣṇa has clearly explained in this chapter that the cowherd damsels of Vṛndāvana were not interested in an analytical approach to life. They simply loved Lord Kṛṣṇa and could not think of anything else. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought that all his devotees should follow in the footsteps of the cowherd damsels of Vraja in order to develop the highest intensity of selfless love of Godhead. Lord Kṛṣṇa has elaborately analyzed the nature of the material world so that the conditioned souls who are trying to enjoy it can cut down the tree of material existence with this knowledge. The word sampadaya chatmanam indicates that a person with such knowledge has no further material existence because he has already achieved the personality of Godhead. Such a person should not loiter in the kingdom of Maya, perpetually refining his understanding of the illusory creation. One who has accepted Lord Kṛṣṇa as everything may enjoy eternal bliss in the Lord's service. Yet even though he remains in this world, he has no more business with it and gives up the analytical procedures for negating it. Lord Kṛṣṇa therefore tells Uddhava, Tyajastram, give up the axe of analytic knowledge by which you have cut down your sense of proprietorship and resistance in the material world. Thus end the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 11th Canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Beyond Renunciation and Knowledge. This is the end of 11th Canto, Part 1.